Okay. So we'll get started. So first foremost, can anyone tell me what is the definition of cloud? Like, how do you define cloud? Anyone? Just a random definition, whatever you have heard, gone through, known. How do you define cloud computing?
So as per my knowledge, it is
Mm-hmm.
something which is virtual, like not physical,
Mm-hmm.
is can be related to cloud in a layman's language. I'm just telling,
Yeah, right. Something which is virtual. What else?
like which is not.
Yes, Pradip.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, not physical, virtual, I get that. Anyone else want to add it to it?
Yes.
It is a set of services which we get which we are provided on the pay on the it's kind of rented basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, correct. Nice. What else? Okay, you so that's all good. Like, services, virtual, pay as you go, or we are taking it on the rent. Right? Correct. Nice idea. There are multiple definition of the cloud. People define it in a multiple way, but basically, whenever I think about cloud, I think it in a two different definitions. I would say, first foremost, I think whenever there is a cloud, there is a data center. It's just that that data center is managed by someone else. So it's a data center which is managed and owned by someone else and used by someone else. So when you say used by someone else, that's where we use services. That's where we pay for those services. It's all virtual for us because we don't manage that data center. So that data center is managed by some provider, and then there are multiple people who are using it. So that's why, this all makes sense, right? And if you go into the actual definitions of cloud, it says cloud computing is a method of running application, software, and storage related data in a centralized computer system. So that data center has almost everything what you need, right? Servers, desktops, platforms, applications, storage, databases, whatever you need. And we are providing access through internet to that services. So how do I access it now? Mobile, laptop, desktop, tab, whatever, and I access it through the internet. Now, the true definition of cloud comes after this. So this is just a basic, you can say a surface of that definition. What is cloud? So it's a data center managed by someone else, owned by someone else. I am using it for those services, and I can take those services any point in time I want. Now let's understand the difference between on-premises and cloud. Some people might say that this is the same case if I have a private data center, right? And I can kind of give it to someone else and kind of use it within the organization. Also, this looks similar. We access it through the internet. That's our data center, right? So, like, what's the true difference in between these two, right? So let's understand it this way, right? I I would ask to answer this question someone who has work on a little bit on-premises stuff. So let's say if you're working on a project and I want to add an additional 10 GB of storage to that space. How do you add the 10 GB of storage space to your private cloud or your private data center?
To get the added storage space means as miss everyone is following the processes, and
Yeah,
with the will open the change ticket to the storage team, then they will allocate the LUN, and after that OS team will allocate LUN to that virtual machine or physical server, whatever, and
correct,
after
correct.
that they will create some partitions, and yeah, that way it will happen.
Yep, yep. If I take a one step back before that, let's say, I'm not even sure about the vendor also. So it starts from finalizing, which drive I want, which vendor is there,
Yeah.
which we have gone with earlier. So on an average, this process takes around, let's say, 2, 3 weeks. If your organization is very agile, I would say at least 2 weeks. Okay. In some cases, it might take a month also. Now,
Yeah,
let's
sure,
say
that's true.
yeah, and let's say we have taken that space, and Rahul is our manager, maybe, I have taken that space and we go ahead and I tell Rahul, we have taken the space, but I think we have done the over provision. That's the actual requirement of was 5 and we have taken a 10. Now I'm not able to utilize it fully, right? Can I give back the 5 GB out of that? No, because we have actually invested money. We bought that hardware or that device, we ordered it, we put it into our infra, and now we are using it. If I say that I don't want to use it, either you kind of get rid of it, but your money is involved, right? So you cannot get rid of it. You cannot resize it because that's what the process you have done 2, 3 weeks. Now it's not a good time to tell that I was not able to utilize it. And the true cloud definition comes here. If it is on the cloud, you can anytime add that space, anytime you can add those things, anytime you can remove this. So that's what the actual a little bit technical definition of cloud is this. Cloud computing is a model of enabling convenient on-demand network access to the shared pool of configurable computing resources. So this pool here is known as now shared pool of configurable computing resources. Now, configurable computing resources means like you can configure, you can adjust, you can take, give, right? Increase, decrease. So that's why it's in configurable and flexible pool of services. Now, what are those services? It could be network, server, storage, applications, any sort of thing. So anything usually in cloud, it's called a service because you are not owning it, you are not buying it, you are using it as a service that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort and a service provider interaction. Now, this is the second part of definition that can be rapidly provisioned. So what we spoke right now, it will take 2 weeks for me to get that, right? The physical one. Here, it's a matter of few minutes for me, right? If I raise a ticket and it's also automated, maximum might take hour or two, because of the process, like internal process that we follow, and you can release it with minimal management effort. Let's say tomorrow we say that we don't need that much, I can release that, or maybe my work is done now, I don't need it, right? So I cannot tell the actual physical hardware provider, I have used it for a month, now you can take it back. No, that doesn't happen. But here in the cloud it happens that, so you can release with minimal management effort and a service provider interaction. Now, why there is a minimal effort and minimal service provider interaction? Because you don't actually speak with multiple people here. You don't go to the vendor, you don't talk about costing, you don't maybe discuss those things. Then there is no third party involved to fix or to put that hardware into your place. There is no actual start of it, right? So that multiple layers in between are removed. So that's why cloud has become very much famous, because of the time and effort which are required in the process. So this is like a full-proof definition of cloud. So it's a model of enabling convenient on-demand access to the shared pool of configurable computing resources. So shared pool of configurable computing resources is your application, storage, network, database, all those things. You can take it. That means you can provision and release them with minimal and management effort and service provider interactions. You don't have to interact with anything. Just an example, if I'm working on Azure or AWS, I need additional space, I need additional service. I don't raise a request to AWS or Azure, telling that I'll be using 10 GB, I'll be using 100 GB. You go ahead in the console, start utilizing it. So there is no interaction, or you can say minimal interaction. Now, cloud model promotes availability, and it's composed of 5 essential characteristics: service models and the deployment model. So there are 3 service models and the 4 deployment models. You talk about any cloud, Azure, AWS, Google, Alibaba, DigitalOcean, and there are 10 different providers in the market. Everywhere it would be something like this, there will be some characteristics, there will be some service model, there will be some deployment models. So we'll start with characteristics first. So there are the 5 essential characteristics of the cloud. First one is on-demand self-service. So within an existing contract, customer can add a new service, storage space, or computing power without formal request of change. This is what we have discussed. When we say configurable computing resources, minimal interaction, that's what we are talking about. It's called as on-demand self-service. Broad network access. How do we access it? Anytime, any place, any device. I just need a good internet connection, that's it. So it's a broad network access service. Resource pooling. Now, this is important. What is resource pooling? This is also known as multi-tenant, multi-user model. That means variety of customer use the same type of resource with different level of accesses. To understand this, let's take a one like regular example. Let's say we own a, let's say, 20 storage building, just for an example. Okay. Now I want to give this building on the rent. Now, while giving it on the rent, it's not like that, I'm telling that everyone you should use the whole building or not. There is no only one customer who will use the whole building, right? So I'm giving it on the rent on the base of my customer's requirement. So let's say people who wants to do the shop, they'll go on the first ground floor. People who have offices or commercial things, they'll go on the second and third. In between, there are all residential apartments. On the top, there is a rooftop restaurant. So now people are using that same building for multiple purpose. So that building becomes a resource with the people using it multiple level of access and multiple type of purposes. So building is a resource where people become a tenants of it. So multiple tenants using a same resource. Now, how does that get translated into the cloud? So let's say I want there's a cloud and there is a, let's say, different devices inside it. Let's talk about storage. Maybe there is a storage space which has 1,000 GB of storage. This is a rack which has, let's say, 1,000 GB of storage. I want 5 GB. Let's say someone else want 1 GB. Someone might want 10 GB, 50 GB, right? We are 19 people. We might come with a 19 different requests. So for our 1 to 5 GB request, no cloud provider will allocate a full machine of 1,000 GB, right? So we will be using a same machine, but we will have a different slice and dice of it. So that's where your resource pooling comes. Multiple people using the same resources with a different type of accesses, you can say. And this is the only reason why the cost of cloud computing has been reduced, because there are millions of customers using the same resource, same application. You think from a software angle also. So this was the reason your access kind of get broadened and your cost get reduced a little bit. So that's nothing but your resource pooling. Elasticity, it talks about flexibility and scalability. So basically the changes. So usually we talk about web shop examples here. What sort of changes I can do it in my infra or my storage as per the requirement. Let's take another example, how elasticity will help in the cloud. Let's say we own e-commerce site, like in together we own an e-commerce site. Now that e-commerce site, comes with a different requirement. Just an example, let's say we're in year end right now. So I have back-to-back sales. Maybe I had Diwali, then I had Christmas, then I have New Year. And I know that rather than my average of 12 months, these 3 months I'll have a more population coming onto my site. How do I handle that? So what I do, I go with my basic stuff for first 8 9 months. For these 3 months, I add an additional infra which can handle this additional traffic, and then I can come back to my normal infra. So it can automatically kind of handle this particular scale. This is what the elasticity and flexibility does to cloud. So this is more of scaling, balancing the additional traffic. That's what comes into flexibility and scalability. This is all possible into the cloud. So you can take additional things for those 2 3 months and then remove those things. This is what we also talked about, in self-service and in the previous example, we were taking on-premises and cloud difference. So that's what about elasticity, I would say. Measured service, we talked about pay as you go, right? Someone told that this is what the cloud is. Everything in the cloud is metered. What does it mean? Metered means it's monitored. According to your usage, you will pay the cost of that service. To be very specific, if you want to think about meter costing, think about your electricity bill, right? You have electricity bill set up. What happens every month? There is a reading and it kind of utilize how much utilization is there, and then they do the calculation and send you the bill. Same thing happens, whatever is your utilization and for that month, you will get the bill accordingly. So it's pay as per usage. What's your use, according to that you will pay. Some people call it as pay as you go also. So you don't have to pay upfront. First you utilize and then you pay. You can block and you can reserve the services, but still, you're paying after the utilization, after some usage, I would say. Most of the time there is no upfront cost. It's not like that, I'm going to AWS or Azure, they'll say that, you just have to give me $1 billion first and then start using it. No, it's not like that. You start utilizing, your bills get generated, you pay accordingly. Now, if you think about the reverse of this, on-premises, if I'm using my own on-premises stuff, I have to first figure out my own data center. And that starts from physical place, electricity, AC temperature, security, hardware, everything. So we invest first and then start using. Here it's different. I take it from someone else and kind of use it. And there are many example like this. You can think about you're using a rented taxi or Ola or Uber. We don't own it, right? We just pay for our travel distance and we use it. So that's what your pay as you go or pay as per the service, right? Electricity bill was the one. You can think about water bill also. You can think about metro. You can think about railways, right? We don't own any of these things. We kind of use it as per a use case. The same thing happens over here in the cloud also. This characteristics will be there with almost every services, almost every cloud. So this becomes your base. Why you want to use the cloud? Because of this cases, I want to use the cloud. Now there are different service models and the deployment models. So there are three service models. Everyone knows about it: software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. I'll just do the quick recap here. Software as a service is the place where you don't want to build and maintain your own softwares and applications. You will just use it from your service provider. So software as a service breaks that tradition where organization buy, develop, and manage their own business applications on their own IT infrastructure, right? So here it will be more of like, I want to do this. Is there any software available for that? What's the license cost? I pay for it. Or what's the usage cost? I pay for it and then start utilizing it. Now, the key benefit here again is we don't have to worry about development and management of these applications. Very simple example. You go to Play Store, whatever applications you see, whichever are there in your phone are example of software as a service. Let's take an example of Gmail. For what purpose we use Gmail? Just sending and receiving the email. I'm least bothered about what's the coding behind Gmail, where my data is stored, how actually it's functioning, when the next release of Gmail is coming. I'm least bothered about those things. My primary task is to send and receive the email. I'll just focus on that, right? Rather than I say that I want to send an email, let's build my own application for sending and receiving the email. No, that doesn't happen in today's world, right? The best example for software as a service is your Office 365 suite, your CRM applications, this Zoom meeting, what we are going through. Let's take an example. My primary task is to kind of deliver the training. So I look for the provider who can give me the training sort of platform where I can share my screen, present something, store the recordings, share the recordings, right? Rather than I go ahead and say hire a team and tell them that let's build a platform where we can take our own meetings. No, not required. I just look for multiple options, whichever is cost efficient to me, I kind of get that. So this is more of a software as a service. These are the examples of Office 365, Salesforce, Google Apps, WebEx, GoToMeeting. Everywhere, you're directly putting your login ID password and utilizing it as a business user. That's become your software as a service, I would say. Next layer is platform as a service. So platform as a service is more of like getting that platform. Okay. So it's like not being able to use it on demand, but you will be using that platform to build your own application. Let's take an example. Let's say I'm building some product. So that building of product or a software product to be specific. Okay. I need multiple coding languages. For testing, I need multiple environments. I need multiple platforms. So now rather than building my own platforms, I look for the platform already available in the cloud. Example, let's say we here decide today to start one development project. Okay, and we came up with a requirement. I need, let's say, Node.js, I need Java, I need Python, right? Let's say. So what we do now, we have laptops, and now I see that laptop is, let's say, i5 configuration. So now we install Python or Studio, or let's say .NET, all those stuff, right? So I'm getting ready with my laptop so that I can code, right? But many of the times this is not now people do it. You can go to the cloud, find out what particular platforms you need, write your code there, test it there, and then deploy. So you don't need actually everything into your laptop, right? At physical places, you can get those platforms from the cloud service provider. What it does, it kind of reduces that time in maintaining all of your hardware and bringing it to your own coding level, I would say. Same thing happens for the testing also. Many a time for testings, I need a different environments, different platforms, upscale environment. So it's not necessary that I should have everything. I'm kind of them getting it from my cloud service provider. And again, things might change. Let's say requirement has changed, and now people might say that I need this different platform, I need different coding technology, right? So in that case, again, it's a time consuming. We see the license and then kind of put it on our hardware and then start utilizing it. So rather than that, I go to cloud, look for that options and start utilizing it. So mostly if you are a developer or a tester, you might come across the platform as a service. Otherwise, we don't actually come right across the platform as a service, I would say. Now, who provides this? Google, Amazon, PHP Cloud Engineer. These are the kind of top level providers, but there are many different services, many different providers. Third one, which is very important for all of us, when you talk about operations, services, project management, is the infrastructure as a service. So when I talk about infra, it's an actual hardware. Infrastructure as a service are the services which are similar to your hardware services provider, where customer can physically rent that particular hardware like storage, servers, or network connectivity. And again, these are all sold using the utility model or pay as you go model, you can say, where we will pay by hours or weeks or businesses. Now, this will eliminate a capital expense of deploying in-house hardware and software. Exact same example when we're talking about on-premises and cloud storage difference, right? I don't need to buy it. Same thing happens. If I'm having my own infra, I need to buy each and everything. If I'm using it from the cloud, I get it on the fly. I'll pay after my usage. So this is the service. That's why the cloud has become that much famous, because it has reduced the in-house expenses, at least the capital expenses, what you put initially, and you start utilizing, and then you split into your monthly cost. That's where your infrastructure as a service comes. We all know who provides this, right? Azure, AWS, Google, and there are again many providers. It depends which one you want to go ahead with. Okay, so these are my service models. There is one more service model actually we'll talk about in a bit. But if you look from the outside, how does it look like? So software as a service, it's all application, which is more of like your end user line, you can say. Platform as a service, where you have almost your integrations, UI, backend, front end, all that kind of thing, mostly is developer and tester. Infra, where you have your virtual storage, machine, networking, and all those stuffs. So if you see the hierarchy wise lies, it's a top layer, which is more of a user, middle layer, it's more of a platform developer level, and infra is mostly, architect level to be specific. Now, what comes under what? If you're working on an infrastructure as a service, so you're working indirectly on a data center, networking, storage, and servers related services. So in infra, it's this is what is taken care by your service provider. If you're working on a platform as a service, it will by default have an infra. With this infra, you will have operating systems, development, database, and management, and those sort of software and applications, I would say. And if you're working on software as a service, it's everything is combined. So let's say if I go back here, if I'm working on a software as a service, indirectly I'll have this also and this also. If I'm working on this, I'll have this. So it's more of like a layered approach, to be specific, I would say. Now, who manages what? If you're on premises, everything is managed by you, right? From application to networking, infra, coding, everything. If you are using infrastructure as a service, your infra, which is this bottom line, is managed by the provider. Then you think about operating systems and data runtimes and all those things. If you're working on platform, it's only application and data. If you're using software as a service, everything is managed by your vendor or a provider. We talk about Gmail here. We don't do anything on Gmail. I talked about Zoom, right? I don't do anything with Zoom, right? Just use it. So that's why software as a service. Now, who owns or maybe who manages what? Usually architects, operations, management guys are more concerned about infra in general. It's not like that they are not least bothered about these two, but this is what their place, they are more interested in. Application developer, they'll usually work with end user. Okay, what sort of UI you need, what sort of functionality you need, what kind of things we need to implement into applications or software, and that's what they work closely with the end user. Whether infra guys, any change that goes into its software, it has an implications of on the infra. So they'll make sure that end user is having no delays or no performance issues, because they are indirectly related to hardware also sometimes. If there is any change in platform, do I need to change anything into infra? So from a visibility point of view, these guys will have a little bit more visibility into this hierarchy, I would say, compared to developers, testers, and the end user, to be specific. Now, these three everyone talks about. Now, there are different service model that people are talking about it. One of it is function as a service. People might talk about application as a service, database as a service. In a way, they are just lying in between these somewhere. Function as a service is more of a new thing where you're writing the functions. Okay. You might not get this 100% now, but I have added it because we will use this in AWS. That's why. So what does that mean? Function as a service. You are using the functions as your service. Now, what is this function? In a development language, whatever you write as a function, it's exactly similar to that. So function is just a piece of action or a piece of code or a task that you have written, to be specific, in any coding language. So it supports multiple coding languages. To be specific, Python is famous, Node.js is famous. These are the two that most probably use, but there are multiple, like C# is also there. I guess .NET is also there. So you can use multiple language in function as a service. All these functions are event driven and scalable. So when I say event driven, if this happens, then function gets executed. So there has to be something. This could be time, event, trigger, if this happens, and then function gets executed. So all of them are event driven and instantaneously scalable. So when I say scalable, they can get executed from like multiple times. Let's say one event, one trigger, 1,000 event, 1,000 triggers, 10,000 million. So they can manage those triggers simultaneously. You don't have to think about the scaling of it. Now, usually we're talking about functions here, right? So functions will get written into any sort of programming language, right? So that's where your platform comes into the picture. This function will get executed on some sort of infra. That's where the infrastructure as a service comes into the picture. But it says it's automatically scalable. So they manage the infra on their own, right? So it's a combination of platform and infra, but it cannot be software as a service because it's not delivered as a product. It's delivered as an event or, to be specific, action or a business logic. So I would say it's a combination of these two, but lies somewhere here so that your end user software can use it, indirectly, to be specific. Usually this is used for scheduled task or job, processing web request or the queue messages. So something like, let's say if clock hits 6 in the morning, this function gets executed and then that function performs certain tasks. It's more of that sort of thing. It's a combination of infra and platform. Also, these actions on the infra level are scalable and they're automatically scalable. That's why some people also called it as a serverless. So you don't actually have a actual servers behind it, but providers manage them automatically. So infra plus platform is equals to your serverless architecture, to be specific, I would say. Why it's called as serverless? Because you don't configure servers behind the function. They get automatically configured. I know this is confusing and this will be, this is sort of, new area. People are still kind of, digging into it, to be specific. So just to remember, function as a service is not an end product. This will be used indirectly in your end product to help you to manage cost and scalability, to be specific. Who will write the function? These are the developers. Again, people who know the coding language, they will write the developer. But what's our task? We have to identify the areas where we can use this. So that's why, operations, services, project management, right? Project manager. So we find an opportunity, can we use in function for this? And then that's where then developer writes the code and then we start integrating and using it. Okay. We'll take an example of this. So if you're thinking about service name in AWS, it's called as Lambda. In Azure, it's called as Azure Functions. Exactly similar services, they are called as function as a service. Now, most of the people won't talk about this because this is what the majority of the focus is. But this gets asked into the exam, we use it. Now people are starting to use it. That's why we have added it here. We'll talk more about this. We'll take an assignment on this also. So you will get more out of it, towards it. Right now, if you don't get this, that's fine. Just remember function as a service where you write the functions or you write the code. Okay. Now comes the deployment model. So characteristics, service model, and then the deployment model. Now, there are four simple deployment model in the cloud, which are like private cloud, which is owned and managed by a single organization. So it might be loaned to a single organization. That's why it can called as a private cloud. Community cloud, there are several organizations working in the same domain. So not very much famous, but who came with this idea? Usually, I guess it started by IBM. IBM came about this idea in around 2000 or 90s. Multiple organization can use the same sort of infra. Usually this is used by NGOs. So they don't have much money, but they want to use the same infra. They don't want to go with the public cloud. So they form a community and then use the cloud in that community. Public cloud, general public. Anyone can go and create the account. You, me, or your own organization, or any big four companies, right? Everyone has a similar access, similar thing. So that's what a public cloud. Anyone can go and create. Hybrid cloud, it's a combination of private and public cloud. If you are working with the enterprise, big organization, this is what today's like hot word. To be specific, people are kind of using it in this way most of the time. If you are working with a small organization and startup, you'll only come across the public cloud. No, I'm only working on private, I'm only working on community. This is more of a very rare stuff nowadays. Public cloud and hybrid cloud, that's where you'll spend majority of your time, I would say. Now, what is AWS? AWS is a public cloud. That's why we are kind of going through this. Now, if I go back here, usually your questions in fundamental or practitioner exam, they'll give you the service name and ask you what type of service is this. Let's say if I'm using a service, that comes into infrastructure as a service. If I'm using something as an ready-made software, that's a software as a service. If I'm using something to write a code, test a code, or build a platform sort of thing, that's a platform as a service. So you need to connect this dot when we go to the services. That's why we take this first. Okay. Question on this could be, let's say they'll give you the business case. They might tell you, what type of cloud I should use, right? Hybrid cloud or public cloud. So let's take an example of hybrid cloud. They might say that I'm an enterprise. I already have my on-premises data center, but now I'm falling short on the storage space. I don't want to invest any additional money. What could be the possible way that I can do that? So that's answer could be, leverage the public cloud and kind of manage in between public and private cloud, things like that. It might say that I'm a new organization. I want to do this. This is the requirement. What sort of, deployment model I should use? So in that case, I would say use the public cloud, right? Community cloud, you don't get any question on that. Your questions are usually public and hybrid cloud, to be specific. What are the advantage of cloud? We have already seen this. So we have seen that it will automate the stuff. It will reduce the cost because there is no upfront cost involved, or there is no upfront payment involved. Flexibility, we talked about it. Mobility, again, any device, anywhere. I just need an internet connection. We talked about flexibility, scalability, resource sharing, right? In a nutshell, we have talked about all of this point. Now, you guys tell me, these are the advantages. What could be possible disadvantages of the cloud? Cloud came into the market, to be specific, public cloud, 2006. Now, normal private cloud, we are talking about it from 2000 itself. So, what are the possible disadvantages of the cloud? Anyone? Like, why we have taken this much of time? It started in 2006, now we are in 2024. Like, still people are thinking, why?
Security.
Correct? Security. What else?
Data breaching.
Data breaching, right? What else?
Data redundancy.
Yeah, redundancy. Yeah. Right.
Dependency it creates, where we can only do it when there is internet.
Yeah.
Yes, this is we are using our internet to access this cloud. So if we do not have the internet, so we cannot access the cloud. Means if something glitch in our internet.
Correct. Right. You talked about dependency. There is one more dependency. This has been coming lately. Let's say if I move to this provider, ABC, XYZ, what if tomorrow they increase the cost? What if tomorrow government regulation comes in our country and they say that no, you cannot use this cloud, right? So anything could happen. So dependency to certain provider or a particular provider, this is also one of the concern nowadays. Okay. All good thoughts. I'll talk a little bit more on the security. Security is a concern, but nowadays cloud has come up with a very good solutions for security. So they are trying to automate the stuff. They are trying to add many things. So usually when you talk about the cloud security, it's a shared responsibility model. When you say shared responsibility, infrastructure security goes to the cloud service provider, application and data security goes to the user. So they are improving upon this. They have added many things, I would say. But still, there is a thought, what if someone stole my data? Many of the people, when I started with the cloud initially in 2000, like early 2010, they said that, where is my data center? Like, where is my data? Just show me the physical place. And that doesn't happen in cloud. You cannot, you cannot tell AWS, let's take me to my machine, right? That doesn't happen. So most of the people have these sort of thoughts also, how it's happening, who is managing my data. Okay. Okay, there were questions in the chat, so I'll just go through them. Okay, what is the difference between private cloud versus on-premises? I would say there is no much difference. It's exactly same. Private cloud, it's to be specific, used by a single organization. So let's say if I am a provider, I might build and give it to someone. This is your private cloud, use it. So that's sort of like single organization use. Ideally, there is no much difference in between private cloud versus on-premises. It is just that if it is you're giving a name of a cloud, that means you have a surplus capacity. That means you are managing it in the advance. That's what the difference. If you just talk about on-premises, your capacity, you cannot go beyond that. So little bit of thing on the capacities. Otherwise, the idea and structure and use cases are same. Okay, there is one more question. No, there is no question. Internet data will go to internet, public data breach, shared infra. You're correct. So internet data will go to, usually a public cloud data goes via public internet. That's another challenge. There are services where you create a different kind of access or pipelines. We'll go through that. But to be specific, talking about disadvantages, security is a concern where people are saying, data is located in other countries or other places. Countries is not a case right now because GDPR is very strict in almost every region. So let's say if my customer is Indian, I cannot take their data to some different geographies. If my customer is US based, I'll put their data into US country itself. So that's there, but still, that location is not managed by you. You don't have a physical access to that location. Privacy, many of the time I get this question, what if, they have attached a different cable to my data, right? Or they have attached something, there is a loophole, someone is accessing my data. So it doesn't happen, but think still there are those cases. All the data breaches, all the security mm, things which has happened in the past or till now are because of the networking or the security which is on the application side, to be specific. Nothing has happened on the infra side yet. So how do you make it more secure? That's where we come into the picture, right? How do I kind of secure my network? How do I secure my ports? How do I secure my application? So you have to keep an extra eye on this. That's what where we comes actually. Another disadvantages would be data transfer charges are additional. So many customers face this challenge actually. Whenever you want to transfer a data within the cloud, let's say from one place to another place, let's say from US to India, India to US, geographically you are moving the data, there is additional cost involved. It's a big cost actually many a time. So that's why people get concerned about it. Migration from one public cloud to another, it's a challenging. So let's say if someone is moving from Azure to AWS, AWS to Azure, and they're doing every 2 3 years, this not a very good sign, right? Because there will be compatibility issue. You might not get the exact service, exact flavor the way you want it, right? So that creates a problem. These are the possible disadvantages. It's not like that, you cannot take care of it. security and privacy, I think, very matured nowadays. There are many services, there are many documentations available, there are many checkpoints available everywhere. So I would say that is taken care of most of the time. But now it depends on us. Let's say if I open the port, I give the public access, now it's my fault, it's not my provider's fault. So you have to think about those. But yeah, you're right, these are the possible disadvantages of using the cloud, I would say. Benefit of the cloud to the business. So there is no upfront capex cost. You can start with a very small setup. You can go with elastic growth. You can go pay as you go. Provisioning of hardware and application is on the fly. Top 4 5, we know that what are those. Provisioning of hardware and application is on the fly. What does that mean? Okay, so think about it. If you're managing your own data center, right? What happens? There is an hardware, there is a machine, right? That machine, that hardware will go end of the life after 7 8 years, to be specific, 6 7 years sometimes, right? So now you don't have to worry about it. When you are thinking from a cloud, you don't have to think about who will change that, when I do change the stuff, like the hardware thing behind the scene. Now you don't have to worry about it. It's your cloud service provider who will take care of our thing. Same thing happens with applications or usage. So you think about application nowadays, we are talking about business intelligence, we are talking about AI, we are talking about robotic process automation. You don't have to worry about it. Your cloud service provider is bringing all those new services to you. You just want to think about how do you want to use this. You don't have to build them again from the scratch. So this is more of like provisioning of hardware and applications is on the fly, but you get an advantage on it. You don't have to worry about it behind the scene. These are the benefits of cloud to the business. Looking at all these things, what do you think? What type of businesses or what type of customer getting more from the cloud? Any example that comes to your mind, like what type of customers or user are getting most from the cloud? Or who is utilizing the cloud to the max? Any examples, if you can tell me?
If they want to reduce like the like the employees, means they would do not want to hire more employees to manage the on-premises servers and workstations, so they can go to the cloud option,
Yep.
according to me.
Yep, correct. But let's go one step back. Like, what are the type of organization who have utilized the cloud more compared to like other group of organization? So now when you're talking about it, it's more of like a very matured cloud. But who started to use the cloud? Why it got so much famous?
Service provider level of companies.
Yeah, service provider based company, correct.
Data backup companies, data analytics people.
Yep, it's a very huge scale, so it's very huge investment. So people usually don't do that on premises, correct?
Yeah.
Rahul says online services business or net example Netflix, very good. To be specific, when it started with e-commerce. E-commerce organizations were the first organization who started with the cloud, and that's why it got so much famous. How Amazon itself started, to be specifically, I would tell you this little bit story later on, but they are also an e-commerce provider. First, they started their e-commerce business and then they started their cloud business. Okay. So e-commerce organizations were the organization where they didn't wanted to put everything into infra, right? Plus, their scale was very different, like country wise, region wise. They were not sure about their growth also. Today I have 100 customer, tomorrow 1,000, day after tomorrow I might have a zero customers also, right? So it's not a very good thing to put everything into infra. Plus they had so many things to taken care of: delivery, back end stuff, inventory, sales, marketing, right? So there are too many things to do at once. So they didn't wanted to put everything into the infra. And again, it's a multiple country business, right? Multiple regions, global business, and they didn't want it to kind of go everything at once. So I should have someone who is providing me services in all those regions or countries, and I should pay only for the particular services. So that's where the e-commerce came into the picture. They started utilizing it and gone to that boom. Second layer was this Ola, Uber, WhatsApp sort of organization. Third layer was this OTT, like online streaming platform, Ghana.com, Wink Music, Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, right? This is what it got famous. And now third layer, when we talk about it's a big organization, an enterprise, they're mostly figuring it out. Should I invest more into the private cloud or my private infra? Or should I start utilizing the cloud? And that's where they are now more focusing on hybrid stuff, in combination to be specific. So these are the type of organization who started to use the cloud and they kind of, then it got highlighted. Common use cases for cloud, we have already spoke about it. So we spoke about OTT, we spoke about application hosting, website hosting, we spoke about data analytics, storage backup, right? Development, test environment. These are the common use cases of the cloud. Okay. Now, just one clarification. Most of the time, I get this question in between the training, right? When I do few services, people start asking me, then this is exactly similar to virtualization, how it is different than the cloud. Many a times, the services in the cloud are mentioned like this: virtual server, virtual storage, virtual networking. This is also another level of confusion that then people get in between the training or after the training. So what's the difference between cloud and virtualization? Actually, they are not apple to apple same thing. Virtualization is a technology which is used in the cloud. So it's a baseline of cloud. But what is virtualization? Virtualization is just the creation of virtual rather than the actual. Now, it could be operating system, server, storage, networking, anything. But with that virtualization, cloud gives us a scalability, flexibility, self-service management, pay-as-you-go services. So I would say virtualization plus all these things is equal to cloud. It's a basic building block, but it's not exactly similar. It's not apple to apple. It's virtualization, it creates a replica for you. With that replica, you get all other things which are coming from your cloud. So these are like those things: scalability, pay as you go, self-service management, or elasticity, I would say. And these are not part of virtualization. This comes with cloud. So you can say virtualization plus these many things is equal to cloud. Confusion occurs because of the naming convention of the services. Most of the time you will talk about virtual server, virtual database. That's why people think then how different it is from the virtualization. But with that virtual word, you are getting all these things also with cloud. Now, history of cloud. Key role played by Amazon. Amazon was purely an e-commerce company, but what happened towards like 2000, beginning in 5 4 5, if you remember, there was a recession in the market. No one was buying the stuff online, and it was a hard hit, to be specific. That's where they came up with this idea. Let's say I have 100 server and I'm using 20 out of them. What do I do with the 80 servers? I give it on the rent. And that's when they officially formed Amazon Web Services in 2006, starting to focus on only infra and storage services. That was with their starting point: storage and infra. After that, then they started with other services, and now every another month or another quarter they add something new and they say something. In 2008, around late 2008, Azure came into the market. So after 2 years of AWS, Azure came into the market. Then, Google, Backspace, this list is endless now, Alibaba, DigitalOcean, and there are different Chinese providers also coming into the market. So still I would say the history here, still now majority of the market, it's like around 39% in public cloud is owned by AWS. Around 24-23% is Azure, and then rest of the other providers, to be specific. So that's how AWS came into the market of this cloud business, I would say. Now we are actually starting with AWS. Now I want to think about like why I should select AWS, Azure, or a Google. Like what's my deciding factor? Usually, there are many deciding factors, but we cannot decide that. But on our level, we'll try to figure it out. It's mostly an organization decision, but still, if I'm going with AWS, why I should go with AWS? I would say worldwide infra. I need a presence everywhere. So let's say today I'm starting my business in India. Tomorrow I'm moving to, let's say, Dubai, Singapore. So do I need to find out another provider there, or my same provider will work over there? So AWS has the largest infrastructure in the world, I would say. Now Azure also, but still it started with AWS. More number of services than any another provider. The primary reason of coming to cloud is I should manage everything at one place. It should not be like that, I'm taking server from one player, database from another player, or let's say networking from some another provider, right? Again, it's become a multi-vendor management thing. To reduce that, people are coming to cloud. That's also one of the reasons. So that's why I look for more number of services than any another provider. AWS provide largest number of service. Now you have a tough competition with Azure services also, because it's like matching very closely with that. Cost effectiveness, you get a very crystal clear billing in AWS. You can get into the depth of it. Few more things I would think I'll tell here is like history. Who owns majority of the market share? Who was the provider? I'll go and check the downtimes. This is what the organization do. Let's say in last 15 years or 10 years, how many downtimes AWS had, right? Were those affected for a region, for a data center, or what was the duration of it? Next point I might think about is a knowledge center or a support center or a support services. So when I say knowledge center, how do you get the documentation on AWS? How their support services work? What are their SLAs? What are the different support mechanisms? So these are more in-depth thing if you want to compare, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, to be specific. Okay. Any questions till now? Any doubts till now? So these are the more of a deciding factor, I would say, why you are going with AWS, why you are going with Azure or a different providers, and you can add few more things also here. Now, AWS divides their infra into a globe, to be specific, in regions. Now, I'll explain you this first concept of regions in AWS. Now, what is this region? All these dots here you can see on the slide are all regions. You might say, what's the difference here? So when I took this screenshot, this orange ones were coming soon. So they are now in the picture. So you might see a different picture, but definitely you will see these circles everywhere. Okay. So these are all region. What is the region? Region is just the geography. Within that geography, you will have multiple data centers. So every region will have multiple data center. When I say multiple, there will be at least two or more. You will never find a combination one region and one data center. In AWS, you will never find this. You will at least get two or more. So every of this dot will have at least two or more data center, I would say. Now in AWS, data centers are called as availability zone, AZs, availability zone. Now what is availability zone? Behind the scene, it could be a single or multiple data center. So let's say, if I'm talking about, there are two regions in India, Mumbai and Hyderabad. So in Mumbai, we have, let's say, three availability zones. Why there are three availability zones? Let's say if one goes down, there should be something else. So that's why there are three different availability zones. Usually they are named like this: AZ1, AZ2, and then AZ3. And there are different naming convention behind it. We'll go through that. Let's say if this one is not available, you have two different ones. Or if you want in high availability, you apply or you deploy your application on multiple places and then you manage through it. They are separate data center, 60 miles, around 100 kilometers away from each other. They are interconnected. If one fails, it doesn't impact the second or third one. So this gives you a little bit of geographical redundancy also, to be specific. Now, how do you get to know about this in AWS? Let's go ahead and see it here. Whenever you go to AWS and log in it, this is where you see your regions. These are all your regions. So I have US. Inside US, you have all this region. In Asia Pac, Hyderabad, Mumbai, all this one. So let's say if I go to Ohio right now and I click on the services, let's say. So in Ohio, you have these three different zones available. US East 2 is your region. So if you go back here, you'll see US East 2 and then Ohio. So this is your region. A, B, C are your availability zone name. This is what I was telling you. AZ1, AZ2, AZ3. You can enable the additional also if you want 1 and 2. So if you want more one. So let's say if I go to now North Virginia. Here I have 6-1, right? So there will be at least 2 or more. No, so you'll not see one. No, this more stuff, that depends on AWS, what's their business, what their forecast, how many customers they have in that particular region to be specific. If I go back to, let's say, Hyderabad, I guess Hyderabad also has 3. So AP South 2 is my region. ABC are my availability zone. If I go back to Mumbai, I'll see 3 there also. So this is how AWS is dividing their infrastructure in multiple regions, in multiple places with multiple availability zone. What is this? Behind this, this is single or multiple data center at one place, at one location. And these are separated by 60 mile, 100 kilometers from each other, so that if this one fails, there is no impact on this one or this one, to be specific. And you can see the list now. That's what I was talking about, is a reach, how much reach you have. There are 12 others region which are not enabled for my account because I don't use them. Plus they have launched or created after my account creation. So if you want, you can enable them. You can raise a service request, but that's what the reach of AWS is, to be specific. Again, how does it look like? There's a region. Inside that region, there are multiple availability zone. Availability zone could be single or multiple data center behind the scene, and they are all interconnected. They are physically separated from each other so that the failure of one doesn't impact the second or third availability zone, to be specific. Now, how do you get the question on this exam? They give you the business case and ask you how many availability zone you will use, how you'll deploy your application. So then they try to confuse you between region and availability zone sometimes. Region is just the physical geography, whether availability zones are actual, place where you will put your infrastructure or your services, or you will use it from there. Okay. Now, we're actually starting with AWS from here, and we actually started. I just wanted to ask everyone, like, how many of you guys have an account on this aws.amazon.com?
I don't have, Pradeep.
Okay. Okay,
I
that's
have
fine.
account, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm adding the link in the chat. Whenever you get time today, you can create it. So I'll just tell you a little bit how do you create. The people you have the account, that's very good. So you go to this site, you click on create an AWS account. Whenever you get time today, tomorrow, you can create it. This usually takes 5 minutes around to create, but for the activation they might take 2-3 hours. So your account sometimes doesn't get activated when you create it. It might take 24 hours sometimes. So here, when you click on sign up, you will give your mail address, you will give your account name, you'll say verify email address. It send the links to your email, you verify, and then you start the process from there. So it's like name, email ID, mobile number, uh, address, region and stuff like that. Towards end of account creation, it will also ask you for the debit card or a credit card. So you need your debit or credit card to create account, so that if there is any bills in the future, you can pay. So that card is just for a confirmation that you can pay the bills. Initially, it will deduct 2 rupees from your account. Uh, so that is more of like just for a verification, and then that gets credited back to your account. After that, it depends on your utilization. So you'll get bills because like based on your utilization. But when you create this account for the first time, this is 12-month free tier account. So there are many free things available. I will explain you more like what comes under free, what's paid. If it is paid, I'll do that assignment. If it's free, I'll ask you guys to share the screen and do the assignment. So if you have not created this, I would recommend you to create the account. Okay. So whenever you get time, you can kind of explore this and create it. So it's a free account. Many people ask, this, like, can my existing account of Amazon will work with over here, right? I already have, let's say, Amazon e-commerce account. I have a Prime membership of AWS, or sorry, Amazon. Will that work here? No, that doesn't work here. It's a separate account. You have to create an account separately because Amazon and AWS are two different places, you know. So Amazon, that music and video and that all other stuff is a different thing. This is AWS is a different thing. So that won't work. You have to create it separately. Okay. Let's go ahead to our first assignment. So most of the time, you know, people start with access management. I prefer to start with, you know, infra and other services because that's what important for everyone. So our first service to start with AWS is Amazon EC2. What is EC2? EC2 is Elastic Cloud Compute. So ECC, Elastic Cloud Computing, that's what the name is for. EC2 is the place where you will create your virtual server in AWS. So whenever someone says that, you know, you need to create a server in AWS, so this is the place you will work. I like to compare it with normal computer. So when I think about a normal computer or my laptop, it's comprised of operating system, CPU, hard drive, network card, firewall, and RAM. Same thing happens with my EC2 also. EC2 will have the similar things. So it's mostly uh, the naming conventions are different over here. So if I say operating system in EC2, it's called as AMIs. AMI is Amazon Machine Image. It's more of like Linux, Windows, SUSE, Red Hat, what sort of, you know, AMI you want to use. This comes with OS and certain software also. So your operating system here has been changed with AMIs. Okay, another thing with AWS, there are a lot of short forms like this: EC2, AMI, EBS, you know, all sort of things which you could think about. Initially, you might feel it overwhelming and you might think that how do I remember all this? But once you go through it multiple times, it's very easy to remember. And there is also a long form related to it. It's like we talked about EC2, it's Elastic Cloud Compute. We talked about AMI, it's Amazon Machine Image. Machine Image is more of like operating system. So once you go through it multiple times, you'll get used to it. Then comes the infra. So for my server, for my machine, I should have some sort of processing power. For that, EC2 has an instance type. Instance type is your processing power. So this is CPU plus RAM. So it gets combined here with CPU and RAM. Then the storage. If I'm creating a server, what's my hard drive? 30 GB, 50 GB, 100 GB. The way we have for laptop, right? 100 GB, 350 GB, 500 GB, right? So here it's called as EBS, which is your block storage. This would be your SSD or a magnetic drive. So your C drive to be specific. For accessing purpose, you know, this is on cloud, so it should have IP address. So for accessing purpose, every machine will have two different IP address, public and private. Security, it's more of like for accessing the machine, you know, this is a Windows machine or a Linux machine. Based on that, you will put your security groups with the protocols like RDP or SSH, or let's say if it is a web server, you will add HTTP. It is a database server, you will add MySQL or a SQL protocols, or if it is a file server, you will add NFS. So depend on your requirement, you will add. So if someone tells you to create an EC2, your first question should be, what's the use? For what purpose I'll be using that? Then according to that, you can again dig into it. What's the operating system? What's the infrastructure requirement? What type of instance type I should use? How much storage you will need? What type of security group I should, yeah, add? Same way, you know, when I go to buy a laptop, I think about it. What's my use case? I'll be playing games, or I'll be using it for office purpose. I want it for my kid so that he can study, right? That's what the first question we ask. Then we go to the next question. What performance I want? Do I want i3, i5, i7? How much storage I want? 500 GB, 1 terabytes? No, 1 TB is huge. We don't need that much. So we stick on 500. Similar sort of questions you will ask when you kind of, you know, create the EC2. So that's what in background. What's EC2? EC2 is a service where you will create your virtual servers in AWS. Now, what is EC2 again? This is a web service which provides us a secure, resizable compute capacity in the cloud. Again, I'm talking about resizable again. So if you remember our first slide, no, configurable computing resources, shared and flexible. Now that's what happening, The same thing comes over here. You can go back and change and have that flexibility. Let's say if you have created EC2 and tomorrow you say that I need to add in storage. I need to change my performance. I need to update my security. That's on the click now. You cannot change the operating system. You can, but it takes like time a little bit. But performance, storage, security, this is on the clicks to be specific. And again, it's a simple interface. Now it's not only infra guys. Everyone can come and create an EC2 machine. Now creating a server with EC2, if you're good at it, it hardly take 30 seconds now compared to, if you want a private server on your own data center. So that's what the change we are talking about. It also changed the economics of costing. Here you will only pay for your usage. So what's your type, what's your utilization, what's your total services count within EC2, according to that you will pay. And it will again, I can create multiple machines for multiple person. It's not like that I have one server, I'll put everything on that itself. So it kind of isolates it from the different failure also. Benefits of EC2. This is a web scale computing. Again, you can add, increase or decrease the capacity. Completely controllable. Anytime you can go and change. You have a complete control of your machine. Flexible cloud hosting. It has a multiple things inside it. So, CPU, RAM, instance type, operating system, different packages. So when you go inside it, you'll get to know more about it. Integrated. Amazon EC2 is already integrated with multiple services in AWS. When I talk about integrations, if you start with EC2, it becomes very easy for you to work on networking, database, storage sort of thing. So it's integrated and becomes very easy to mix these services together, to be specific. Reliable. Amazon offers a high available, high reliable environment. So it gives you 99.95% of availability for each region. Again, every region has a multiple availability zone. So if you put it on the multiple availability zone, you kind of reach that 100% stuff also. Secure. It's very secure. There are multiple layers of security now. So you have a network security, you have an instance layer of security also with the help of your security group. Inexpensive. Again, we go our pay as you go, and we'll use the capacity which is required. So we'll consume according to the requirement, and you will pay according to your utilization. Now, when you are talking about your free tier usage, there is a 750 hours of EC2 given to you every month for 12 months, after you start utilizing or after you create your account. For first 12 months, every month 750 hours. But that 750 hours comes with the limitations. It's not like that you can create all the machines. So when I talk about my machine, my machine will have certain instance type, certain storage, right? So there are limitations on that. We will talk about it. Now, how do you want to pay for this, right? So depend on that payment option. There are different EC2 options they have created. Let's say if I want to create my EC2 for 2-3 hours, or let's say few hours, on demand instance is the best place, where I can pay the money, or which I can use. So on demand instance will allow you to pay by a fixed rate of hours, seconds, after you create the instance. Reserved instance. So this is sort of, purchasing with the discounts, So we purchase a reserved instance with a significant discount. These are for long-term use cases, like 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years. Now, what's the difference in between on-demand and reserved instance? Let's understand it with a very basic example. Let's say I travel via metro every day to work, right? Every day I go to the station, I take the ticket, right? While going also, while coming back also. Rather than taking ticket every time, I know I am going there daily, I can take a monthly, quarterly, or yearly pass. Now, what that pass comes handy to me. Secondly, I'm paying a cost for a month. So they give me the discount. So usually if you calculate, the passes are a little bit cheaper because it's for a long-term use cases. That's what same thing is happening with the reserved instance. If you are using your instance for a longer duration, you should put it into the reserved instance. What is happening? You are saying Amazon that I'll be using these resources for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. Amazon said, okay, that's a commitment, right? I'm getting a long-term customer. So you get 30%, 40% discount, sometimes 20, depends on what combinations you're using. So usually it's 30% rough. Now, if you say that I'm using it for longer duration, I'll still put into on-demand instance, you can, but it's your loss, right? So this is where you have to find out an opportunity to reduce your cost. Recently, sorry, recently they have added this savings plan also. Saving plans will reduce your EC2 costing by making a commitment to consistent amount of usage. So in a reserved instance, you're reserving a capacity. In a saving plan, you're saying that I'll be paying $100 every hour or every month, right? So you get a discount on that $100. So you get certain things into that particular amount. So this is a commitment for consistent amount of usage in USD per hour for the term of 1 to 3 years. So indirectly, you are saying that I'll invest this much, I'll use this much by means of costing, rather than saying that I need 1 CPU, 2 CPU, or 10 CPU. I'll say I'll put $10 every hour, right? So that's how you get a little bit of discount. Little confusing, but once you start using it, you'll get more out of that. Then comes the spot instance. Spot instance is bidding on unused instances. This is mostly used for testing and R&D purpose. So let's think about it. I'm doing some testing and I need a high scale environment, right? I checked in on demand. The price is, let's say, 10 USD per hour. But I check it in the spot instance, I get it on the $7. So spot instances are the place where people are bidding for the resources. Whoever bids higher, he gets that particular resource, to be specific. But let's say if there are no resources and 2, 3 people bidding for the same resources, again, whoever is paying higher will get the resources. Once he have got the resource and let's say still people are bidding for it, sometimes your resources can be released from you and given to someone else if you don't change the bidding amount, if you don't update your bidding amount. So there might be a potential data loss or a resource loss here. That's why spot instances are never used with production environment. This is always testing and R&D, and again for some short-term amount of usage, with high infra requirement, to be specific. Okay, dedicated host. Dedicated host, you remember multi-tenant, multi-user environment. So someone might say that, I don't want to go into the multi-tenant, multi-user model. I want to use, this should be my machine. I should not share the infrastructure or underlying hardware with different provider. In that case, you can go to the dedicated host model. It's very costly, you have to pay a little bit higher amount compared to all, but you will get a fixed host. Your underlying hardware will not change, when you are using that machine. In other cases, it might change. Okay, dedicated instance, it's again paying by hour for the instance that runs on the single hardware. So again, you are paying for the instance, which will not change the hardware behind the scenes. So you are again fixing the hardware piece. Capacity reservation, again, I can say that I want to reserve this much capacity, but it is availability zone specific. So I know these are all confusing, but I'll tell you the one which you need to remember, like hard coded wise. This one, this one, this one, and this one. If you remember this four, you can kind of get in conjunction with all other also. And most of the time, your questions are usually around these four. On demand, we are paying by hours. Reserved, we are reserving the instance. So you can think about that metro pass which I was talking about. Spot is testing and R&D. It's a bidding environment. People are bidding. Whoever is bidding higher will get the resources, not used for production, only testing and R&D. Dedicated host, you think about single tenant, single user. So you are not going into the cloud model of multi-tenant, multi-user. You say, I am the user. I want to use this physical host only for my purpose. Let's say insurance, banking, these sort of security concerns, domains, to be specific. How does the question get asked? They'll give you the scenario. They'll ask you what type of EC2 options you will use. This is mostly solution architect stuff. They'll give you the business case and ask you what type of EC2 options you will use. So you have to now gauge the capacity there. If it is a long-term use, you go with the reserved instance. If it is short-term use, you think about on-demand. If it is testing R&D, you think about spot. If it is security, you think about dedicated host, right? So this gets asked in your exam. In a practical way, when you are thinking about a free tier account or account that we are using, we will only have on-demand instance 750 hours every month. With this on-demand 750 hours, there is only one instance type that you use, which is called as T2 micro. Now, what's this T2 micro? We'll go into it with detail. Storage, you can use only 30 GB of storage. You cannot go beyond that. So these are the limitations that you need to follow if you are into the free tier account. Otherwise, you get charged for it. Okay. I'll take a little pause here. I know this is too much at once, but still, we will discuss them multiple times. Okay. Any questions so far? Now we
I'm
go
good,
into.
thank you. Yeah.
Yep, thanks. Let me know, if anyone has any questions. Now, time to go into instance types. So when we go back to this diagram of EC2, like what's my instance type, what's my processing power? This is another question to ask when you are creating the machines or creating the server. Okay. Sometimes I say it as a machine. Sometimes I say it as an instance. Sometimes I say it's as an EC2. All those are a valid like naming convention. When you go into AWS also, you'll find similar things everywhere. So instance, virtual server, virtual machine, EC2, mostly similar. No? Okay, coming back to the processing power. So what is your use of machine, right? For what purpose you are creating the server? Is it for website? It is for database? It is for some application hosting? What type of application it is? Depend on that, you have to choose your instance type, which is your processing power. There is no hard coded stuff. You have to use only this or that. It's based on like intelligence and the backend stuff what AWS suggests. So if you have a dense storage type of a machine, you can use D2. If you are using, let's say, graphics intensive machine, you will use G2 type of instance. If you are using, let's say, high speed machine, you can use I2. So all these are a recommended stuff. No, let's say T2. In T2 is lowest cost general purpose. In every category, there are certain subcategories also. Let's say if I talk about T2, in T2, you have T2 micro, T2 large, T2 extra large. So there are certain subcategories also where you can see the difference between, your CPUs and RAM. The only one that we will use is T2 micro, which comes with one CPU and one GIB memory. GIB, GB is the same. So you can say 1 GB memory and one CPU. Now you think about it, one CPU and 1 GB memory is like nothing. You might face a performance issue, right? But what's your use? If you are using it for, let's say, high speed stuff, T2 will not be a very good idea. You should go with I2 in that case. Now, how do you remember this? You just remember first name of it. So D is for dense, R for memory, M for main purpose, C for compute, G for graphics, I for IOS, F for field programmable array, T2 is low cost. So that one word you have to remember, and you can create this jargon. Dr. Mike gift pick. So D for density, R for RAM, M for main choice, C for compute, G for graphics. So likewise, you don't get question on these. 100% sure. Earlier they used to ask, but now they have stopped asking this because there are so many types. Plus, you get it in the console when you are creating the machine. You can very easily kind of select that. So these are the type of your instances to be specific. Okay, we have few more things, but we'll go into that later. Now for today, what we will do, we'll go it through the console and I'll show you the assignment. From tomorrow actuals, you guys will be sharing and we'll go through your screen. So let's say I just want to create one EC2. How do I create that? That's what our assignment. I'll go back to Ohio.
So we can create the instance, Pratik, in any of the regions, right?
Yeah, we can create EC2 in any of the region. It depends on me where I want to create.
Okay.
Points to decide, I would say, where is your customer? So your customer is, let's say, in that region, go ahead and create in that region. Because let's say now if I'm in India and I'm accessing the US machine, there might be a latency, right? There might be a data also. So I would keep their data in that region. So general thumb rule is, where is my customer? That's where I create my machine or application, so that I don't face a.
Okay. So like as of now, for testing or practicing purpose, any zone is fine.
Yep, any zone, any region is fine.
Okay.
One more clarity on the cost is, uh, it's not like that, if I'm paying a $1 in Ohio, I'll pay $1 for that same service in every region. The costing it a little bit varies. Ohio and North Virginia are the oldest region of AWS. That's why, for the practice, many times I prefer that. And I'm based out of Ohio, so it's easy for me from a latency point of view. So most of the time, I use this region. But to your question, you can use any.
Okay.
Okay. So when you come to the console, so you'll usually get a home screen like this, and then it will show you your applications, resources, services here. So these are all different services. When you come to the console, you just simply type EC2 here. That's our service, virtual servers into the cloud. I'll just click on it. And that's what takes me to the EC2 screen. Left hand side, there are the different components of EC2. This is my dashboard, which will tell me in this particular region. Again, this is my region. Inside that region, how many instances I have, how many stuff I have created till now. Right now, I don't have any instances. That's why it says 0. These are the other things which gets added to your instance. So we'll see them in a bit. Other is like, what is this status of this region? It's operating normally. If there is any scheduled thing in this region, it will highlight over here if anything is scheduled. So our task is to create, let's say, Windows server or a Windows instance. Okay, so I'll go to instances here, and I'll say launch instance. AWS often changes their UI. So last week I was checking, it was a little bit different UI here. Now they have changed again a little bit. So you might see this changes happening, whenever you are visiting the console. Last time it was different, now it's different. It's because they keep continuously changing the thing behind the stuff. So your flow doesn't get changed. It's just that your UI gets changed sometimes. Okay. So I'll click on launch instance. First thing is to add name and tag. Name and tag is just to identify or know your instance. Let's say this is Windows Server. So this will be highlighted when I create the instance or when I see the instance from outside. I might have 500 instance, right? So how do you know your instance? So you can add multiple tags also. I'll say project name. I can add client name. So let's say if I have a 500 instance, I should know about it, like which instance for which particular client, which particular purpose. So you can add those. For testing and for practicing purpose, we don't go much into it, but in the real-time environment, you will use them a lot, because it's sometimes then it gets very difficult if you don't follow the naming convention to know your machines or to your instance. So I have added it as a Windows server. Next step is to select AMI. Again, Amazon Machine Image. What is this? This is more of an operating system and certain softwares combined into it. So Linux, Mac, Ubuntu, Windows, right? There are different buckets over here. We'll go with the Windows. So I'll select Windows for now. Okay. If it is written it's free tier eligible, that means it's free. Otherwise, where it's not written, you have to first find out the cost of it. Don't use it directly. All of those free tier eligible you can use. So I'll say, let's say we go with the default server 2025 base. Okay, that's fine. That's your AMI. What type of architecture it has, what type of machine it has, it is explained over here. Instance type. What's your instance type? So there are multiple instance type. You need to select the one which is free tier eligible. Now, sometime it happens that now this is the new machine and this machine is not compatible with T2. That's why it has taken a T3 over here. So I'll change it to T2 again. Let me change the machine. Now you can see it's T2 and it's mentioned over here also. In your first year, it includes 750 hours of T2 micro or a T3 micro in the region where T2 is not available or unavailable. Mine is a paid account, so any which way I'll get paid for it. I need to pay for it. But this one is a free tier eligible. It's mentioned over here. And how much is the usage? It's a 750 hours. Storage, you get a 30 GB of storage. There's a difference in between GB and GB. It's GB byte 1074 MB. Most of the cloud providers uses this. You can consider it as a GB also, that's fine. Okay, so I have added T2 micro. Now what's next? Next is a key pair. Now what is key pair? Key pair is a secured way to get into your system. This is pair which is used for your password generation for your account. So this is more of like a security you're adding to your machine. So I'll say create a new key pair. I'll give a name. Let's say this is 7th December. Okay. Most of the time you'll go with PEM. If you are using Linux system and you're using PuTTY or SSH, in that case you use PPK. But nowadays no one uses this. Usually we log in through web. That's why I'll go with PEM. So I'll say create. This gets added into this and it gets downloaded into my account. So when I use this machine, I'll use this key file for a security reason. Next comes network security. I will skip this for now. Just we will add RDP because it's a Windows machine. So we'll go with this one. I'll explain this later to you. Storage, 30 GB of storage. It's SSD. Inside SSD, there are multiple types. So usually you can use SSD or magnetic, and that's what comes under the free tier up to 30 GB. We'll go with this. This is your C drive. Okay, advanced details will go later. So let's say we have selected the minimum required stuff, name, AMI, instance type, key pair, security group. So that's your security group. Network, we are going with the default network. So that's what we use initially. When we go a little bit in depth, we'll create our custom network also. For now, we are using a default network, and that's where we are creating our security group, which is RDP. If you want, you can create a new one, or you can use your existing groups also. But this is more of like once you start utilizing it. So for now, we'll go with RDP because it's a Windows machine. So remote desktop protocol, that's what I need to connect. Okay. And then the storage. I'll say launch instance. Every instance comes with this sort of ID. It's an alphanumeric ID. It's called an instance ID. So that's the instance ID you have. Every instance comes with these sort of IDs. Now my instance is the running state. Again, I click on it. You'll get your details here. What's the public IP of address? What's the private IP? So this is coming from your network, which is your default network. This is from an outside network. This is what you will use to connect. Right now I am working from my home and I need to connect to the cloud machine. So public IP, public internet, that's the only way that I can connect to it. Again, instance type, what's my machine, what's my, where it is launched. So all those details for that machine is given over here. Now we need to connect to this machine. Now, how do I connect to this machine? Again, there is only one single machine. This is what the name we have provided. So for connecting to this machine, we'll click on connect. I'll connect it through RDP, which is very easiest way to connect. I'll click on remote desktop, so it will download the RDP for me. You can use the RDP from your machine also. I can do this also here, remote desktop connection, or I can use this downloaded one also. Now in this one, it will take your username automatically. It will ask you for the password. So now we will get the password from that file. So this is the file that you have used with this one. We'll say upload a private key. I'll upload it. And we'll decrypt the password. Copy. And then you will paste that password into the machine. And that's your first virtual server in AWS. It's loading. It's again T2 micro, so it takes time.
Okay, so first we have created the server in the console, and then we are connecting to the server through RDP, right? Because
Correct.
it's a Windows server. Okay.
Correct. If it is, let's say, Linux server, I will connect through SSH.
That's it. Okay.
That's why we did RDP. Correct. Now, for what purpose you want to use the server, that's another question. We just took a
Yeah.
random example that, I want to do it Windows server. So we'll take a couple of examples. So later on, but let's say for a random stuff, how do I create a Windows server in AWS? How much time it takes? If you're good at it, it hardly take 30 seconds.
Okay.
Now, there is nothing inside this. So if you go here, you will see that 30 GB of storage space. This is what we created, 29.9. That's your 30 GB. Right now, there is nothing inside it. It's basically a plain machine. But it works in the similar way. You can go into control panel. You can change your passwords if you want. You can create multiple users for this. There's an address given over here in the right side. For what purpose you want to use the machine, we'll discuss that more tomorrow. Now, if I go back here, let's say to machine. So right now it's running, right? Now, if you say that I don't want this machine, you can change the instance state to stop. When you stop, what will happen? Your storage will be there, but machine will be in a stop state. This is exactly similar to shutting down your laptop. So all the configurations are there, all the machines are there, like the softwares are there. It is just that I'm not using it. So when you stop the machine, what happens? Your T2 micro costing it stop, but your 30 GB storage cost will be still there. So you have it free right now, but in the real time, your compute cost get paused, but you will pay for your storage costing. That's what happened in the stop instance. So let's say, if it is business application and it gets used only in business hours, let's say morning 9 to evening 6. So it doesn't make any sense to keep the machine running 24 into 7. I can stop the machine after my business hour so that I can save some cost. So that's the logic behind start, stop, and all that stuff. Reboot is a normal reboot. Hibernate, again, same like a laptop hibernate. Terminate is like a delete instance or a remove instance. Once you terminate the machine, you will not be able to use that machine ever again. So this is like delete it from the scratch. And these are the different, you can say instance states that you can use. Once I terminate, tomorrow I come again and I can start that machine. But once I terminate, I cannot use that. Like for a stop, it's possible. I stop and tomorrow I log in and start that machine again. But here it's not possible. Once I do that, everything was with that machine, it's gone. And now let's say we have run this machine for an hour. So that's again hourly costing. I'll pay for that hour, or it's 750 minus 1 hour, so I have 749 now, like that. So that's how you use your machine. And these are the different instance state. Now you might say that, Windows operating system and the other one, but I want to use something else. Let's say something from Oracle, something for SAP. How do I use that? So that's what goes into your AMIs again. I'll tell you a little bit more detail of AMI. So we have used the Windows one. Let's say if I go back to launch again. Here, you will see all the quick starts one, and that's where we have used Windows, right? But if you want to get into more details of, AMI and more versions of AMI, you click it here, browse more AMI. Here you have multiple categories: quick start, my AMIs, marketplace, and the community. Quick start are given by AWS. Again, this is what we have used now. My AMI is your custom versions of AMI. So we'll see later, like how do you create your custom versions? That's our tomorrow's assignment. Once you have created, you will be able to see them here. Marketplace is a third party sort of things, which gets added to AWS. So let's say if I want to work on something from Oracle or SAP, I look for those machines here. So these are like a trusted provider who have added their machines into AWS environment. And there are over 10,000 over plus machines, to be specific. So you can, let's say if someone wants to do something in DevOps or maybe machine learning, so you can kind of click on that and get those sort of machine and then start utilizing. Most of them are paid, but you still get a free versions also, but you can check the costing when you go into the detailing of that machine. You can use any sort of machine which you need here, but this will be from the provider. This is not AWS version directly. Now, then next comes the community. Now, what's the difference between marketplace and the community? Like underlying thing is same, these are the people outside the AWS, they have added the machine. It does that marketplace AMIs are trusted and verified. If you need a support for this, you can get that. Communities are published by anyone. So people like you, me, anyone can go and publish. They are not 100% to be validated, I would say, from a software point of view. These come from the trusted third party and AWS providers. So that's a difference. Usually we will use quick start only. Sometimes you will use my AMI also. This is mostly organization stuff that you will use. Your cost also varies by the use of your AMI. If it is not written as a free tier eligible, I would not recommend to use that AMI. We'll only use free free tier eligible AMIs to be specific. So again, if someone asks you, to create EC2, what would be your questions? What particular operating systems or AMIs will be using? What would be my instance type? So in instance type, this is not only like this one. If I go to compare the instance type, I'll get that list which I was talking about. So you can see there are different 780 types of instances. And on the broader level, T2 is one category, A, C, right? C is for usually compute, right? So you will get all those categories inside that. Then there are subcategories. Again, this depends on your use cases. Now, if you focus more on T2, what happens in T2? T2 nano, micro, small, medium, large, extra large, right? So here in T2, you will get a 1 GB of memory and one CPU to be specific. At one place you have 0.5 also, but you have like one or two CPUs, right? Not more than that. In T2 large, you have 8 and 4 CPUs. But what is changing with the instance type is this CPU and RAM. This is what your RAM is. So we have used T2 micro, let's say. So if you go and click on T2 micro, that's one CPU, 1 GB memory. If you want to increase, you can go to small, medium, large, and you may get additional CPU and RAM, but the costing will come. In a free tier, it's only this one that we should go ahead with. And if I go into the other one, you can see here how the CPU and RAM is changing. You get more speed, more infra, and you'll pay more also. You can click on any one of this, you'll get more options. G, I, this is what I was talking about. I is usually for high IOPS, input output per second, high speed. And that's where you see your CPU and RAM, how it is changing, what sort of storage compatible with that machine. So you can see the increase in the storage compatibility also. And again, there are many options available here. The thumb rule of selecting the instance type is the one which I was talking about is this, like for what purpose you want to use according to that. So I is for IOPS, G is for graphics, C is for compute. So based on your requirement, you will go and deep dive into it. Now, someone might say that I started with T2 micro, how do I change it? Right. The previous machine, we have already started with T2 micro. Can I change it to T3? Yes, you can change it. You need to stop your machine and then kind of reapply the instance. So let's say this is the one, this is with T2 micro. How do I change? I go to actions, I go to instance setting, I says change instance type. This is grayed out because my instance is running. So if you think about your laptop, you cannot change CPU and RAM while the laptop is running, right? I need to shut down the machine and then do that. Same thing here. Once you stop the machine, you will be able to change your instance type. So I'll just explain you that a little bit. Let's say I am stopping the machine for now. So once I stop, this will go away, this will be automatically shutting down. Sometimes it takes time to kind of reflect. So you can use the refresh button or a refresh page. Okay, what does happen after stopping? You'll pay for the storage only. Your T2 micro cost get paused here because you are not utilizing the compute. Now it stopped. So if I go back to state now, I can start it again or I can remove it. Anything is possible, but you cannot stop it again. You cannot reboot or hibernate because it's a stopped case. You go to action again, you say instance setting, change instance type. Now that's available to you. You can change it from T2 to anything. You just have to change it and start it again. But I will not do that because all the other instances are paid. But still, if you want, you can kind of go into the list and select anything here, and then you can say just start it again. Will not change it. I'll just hit on cancel. Okay. And now I can either start this machine or stop this or delete this. For now, I'll terminate the machine. So we'll take a pause here today. Once everyone has an account created, from tomorrow, what we will do, I'll ask anyone to share the screen, and from there we'll go into a little bit of more assignments and details. What we did today, we just have gone through the basic, like what is cloud computing, service model, deployment model, how do you define cloud, advantage, disadvantages, and we have touched upon EC2. This is not even 10-20% of EC2. We'll go into the more details now. How do you create a machine? What are the different type of machines available? How do you put a load balancer, scaling, all those advanced options. We'll go them into tomorrow. Okay. So if you create any machine for the practice, I would recommend you to terminate them like this. Once it's terminated, it will show it has here terminated. This will show in my console for some time, but if I relog in after, let's say, half an hour, I'll not be able to see this machine again. This will be gone. So now I cannot start this machine again. There is no way that I can work on the same machine. But this is the safest way for the assignment and practice, because once you terminate, everything gets removed from that machine. Storage, networking, whatever you have used inside it, everything is removed. Everything is freed right now. Any questions? Any doubts?
Yes, Mr.
Can I
Pratik.
do this on, I'm sorry, can I try use my phone, or should I use this or create the account and try this and practice only on the laptop?
Laptop. On the phone, you
Laptop.
cannot. You have the mobile application also, the Android application, but that's more for a monitoring, how many machines you have and what stuff you have. You cannot actually do
Okay.
the assignment, not effective.
Mr. Pratik, I have a question.
Yep.
I had an account in Amazon and I created EC2 bucket, but means this is past 2 years ago. So currently, I think according to me, I exhausted my all the hours, which is 750 hours, as you said. So
Hmm.
uh, what means I need to create this account again with another debit or credit card, or I can use my previous account.
Hmm. Okay. See, when you are creating a different account, you should use a different email ID and different number, because that gets stored into database. I'm not sure about card now. They might have improved upon that particular thing also. But if you want to create, you should use it with a different email ID. If you put the same email ID and try to create the account, there will be an error. It said it's already existed. You can reactivate the same account. When you reactivate the same account, that will not be a free tier account. So you'll have to pay for each and every service, whatever you are using. And you have to be a little bit extra cautious then, you're like me, when you create, you immediately delete or remove so that you get minimal billing. If you want to do more practice and you have an additional email ID, I would recommend you to create a separate account with different credentials.
Thank you, Mr. Pratik. And I have second question also. Can I ask?
Yep, go ahead anytime, no worries.
As you said, we have to create the machine, the Windows machine, or we can create any machine.
Mm-hmm.
So for the practice, so I have a question in my mind. Like, if we want to create two machines, like first is Windows and second one is Linux machine. So in this case, do we have to give two EC2, like two T2 like which you
Mhm.
said, what
Uh-huh.
T2 we can give. So can we give two T2 like for both of the machines? Means the separate T2 for Windows and separate for the Linux.
Uh, okay, just a second, I'll just open Paint here so that we understand. Okay, so let's say this is my EC2 machine, first one, and this is my EC2 machine, second one. This machine comes with the separate AMI, separate security group, separate instance type. So when you say instance type, that's what your T2 micro is. If you're working on the separate machine, this will have altogether separate stuff. Whether it's T2, T3, that depends on you. But these are two separate things.
Okay.
There is no overlap.
So another question is, if we are using like two machines, so means the Amazon will charge us like according to the like one are using, we are simultaneously using two machines. First
Hmm.
is Windows, second is Linux.
Hmm.
So Amazon will charge us 2 hours for this, like we are using one for this or one for this.
Correct, correct. So you have 750 hours, okay? So let's say you are running these two machines for one day. So that will be 24 for this, 20 for this. The total is your 48 hours. So next day you will have 702, 750 minus 48, that's 702 remaining. So this is separate hour, this is separate hour. So let's say if I'm running
Okay.
a 10 machine, that's 240 hours a day. It's like that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep. Good question.
Okay, so
And
Pratik, like, is there any where is that option where we can see that how many hours left uh,
hmm,
out of 750?
yep, yep, yep. So it's not directly available, but you can go here in billing and cost management. Usually, if it is a new account or a free account, here it shows you like what's your
Mhm.
utilization of free tire, and then you also get email notification you have used
Okay.
50% of your free
Hmm.
tire, stuff like that. Mine is not free account now, so it tells me about the costing related stuff, and I can go and check, how what's my utilization. So let's
Hmm.
after the utilization, if I go into this stuff, let's say I'll go to previous month, December it just started. So let's say if I have used EC2, so I can go into EC2 and see, I have like zero point 0.6 USD. Where I
Hmm.
spent in Ohio. For which machine I spent for Linux T2 Micro. I used it for these many hours and this was the costing. So that's much of detailing you get. Same thing happens when you have a free tire, it will tell you have utilized this, but here it will be zero. It's like that.
Okay.
So you go to your
Okay.
name and you go to the billing details to just to get a little bit
Okay.
more.
And anyway, maybe we'll be getting the email as well, right?
Yeah, you get the emails. If you utilize more,
Uh-huh. More, yeah, yeah. Yes, okay.
many a times, it happens when you have a new account, they do also call you for the verification. So not everyone,
Okay.
but some of you might get a call that you have
Hmm.
created this account. Do you know how to use it? Are you aware of the costing? Because sometimes it happens, people create account, do anything, they get charged like crazy, like
Okay.
1,000 USD, and they're
Hmm.
not able to pay. So sometimes AWS calls and checks back also. They assign some like they have separate call center sort of thing, where you get these sort of things sometimes.
Okay, okay, okay.
Any other questions?
Can I use same credit card the second account?
You can earlier, but now if they have changed something, I don't know if there is a recent change. But earlier, these things was possible. I used to use same card for 2, 3 accounts. I have done that. But now, if there is any change, I'm not aware of it. Maybe try.
Okay.
Just a quick
But
question.
but you cannot use the same email and the number. That's for sure. Yeah. Go ahead. Other question.
Yeah, if we stop the server incident machine, right? So we do not get charged, right? We don't
Yeah.
need to terminate, right? It's just when I'm running and I'll be charged, right?
No.
Normal.
No, no. Let's
Mhm.
think it this way. When you create an EC2 machine, you use T2 micro, right? You use
Sure. Yeah.
storage also, correct? Like
Mm-hmm.
30 GB or 50 GB. So when you stop the machine, you will not get charged 100%, but you will get charged partially for the storage that you are blocking. So you're blocking that storage when you're stopping the machine. Think about it in a way, when I stop my laptop or shut down my laptop, I have my hard drive as it is, all my softwares as it is, so it's untouched, right? So same thing happens if I stop my server. I'm not using a power, I'm not using a compute, but I'm using the storage. So you'll get charged partially there for the storage. If you're in a free tier, you won't get charged, but if you're in a paid account, you will get charged for your stop machine also for the storage that is in use.
Internet use.
Okay, any other question?
Yes, Mr. Pratik. If we are using in future like the paid account,
Hmm.
so that time we will select a region. Okay, the like we are selecting the US region, and another time we are changing the region. So another time we change this, and we are selecting the India region or another region. So
Uh-huh.
do we have to pay extra for the like region wise? We have to pay
There is a
the
slight
separate regions, separate amount.
there is a slight change in the costing in the region wise, but not like huge. So when you say region wide cost change, it's usually based on let's take an example. Let's say India and US. Okay. So let's say if I have a data center in India and data center in US. So real estate cost in India is different. Real estate cost in US is different. Like I'm using in a way physical data center. Government taxes are different. Support services costing are different. So there is a slight change in the costing. It's not like that if I'm paying a $1 in US, I'll pay $1 in every region or every country. It might change slightly, but it's not very significant also on the other hand. And the same logic, if I have one instance in US and one instance in India, that means I have two machines. So my cost is any which way doubled, because there are two separate machines. So there is a slight variation in the costing, and it also depends on the number of machines that you have. And someone might say that I don't know, like how does it look like, how many machines I have. So here you can see, let's say if I at once I need to see how many machines I have in a whole AWS. So it will show over here, you'll see all those regions at once and you'll see all those machines over here. You can see this networks and subnet. These are the default stuff. Usually this is the where the first column you will see your machines available. So we'll get charged separately for every region. There might be variations in the cost because of government support services and the real estate and infra cost. Did I answer
Thank
the
you.
question?
Yes, yes.
Uh, Anything else?
So Pratik, like on which basis we select the reasons, like what type of questions we get, and according to that we select the reason, or like
Yeah,
what is the
thumb rule
Mhm.
is where is your customer, right? So if your
Okay,
customer is in that particular geography, that particular location nearby, I'll select that particular region uh, for the
okay,
speed and latency and GDPR compliance.
oh, okay, yeah, right.
Yeah. Any other question? So if you want to read, spend a little bit more time on EC2. Tomorrow we will again start with the same concept. So we will create like 3, 4 different machines, and
Mhm.
we'll go into little bit more detail of load balancer and auto scaling. How do you put a load balancer in on EC2? How do you put a scaling on EC2? These would be our concepts for tomorrow.
Okay. So do we have any syllabus or like agenda, like complete, what will be the next topics and all that going further?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have it written, but I'll tell you. Like, first
Okay,
focus is compute. So compute is mainly EC2 and what I'm talking about, scaling and
mm,
stuff like that. Second
okay,
focus would be networking. So that's where we create our custom network. So you can see here there is a one VPC in every network, right? So we create our custom networks. So our second focus would be networking. Third, we go to then storage, monitoring, identity access management, databases. These are the smaller chunks. But first three major thing is compute, networking, and storage. Like these are the big
uh,
topic for every exam you go. Then there are small topics that I'll tell you. And usually I'll tell you what I'm going to take in next session. That's how it is. So
okay,
usually,
okay,
we will require tomorrow and like one more session for it, EC2, and like that
mm-hmm.
is compute. And then after maybe third session, we will start with networking.
Okay. So I think no any like prerequisites for networking, like if we don't have any knowledge.
No, that's fine. I'll take it. I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
No worries. Yeah.
Okay. And is there any like Linux part also will be covered going further?
Yeah, little bit. You don't need
Mhm.
any knowledge, but I'll guide you, So let's say today we created a Windows machine. So when we create,
Okay.
let's say Linux machine, how do I work
Mhm.
on that? How do I connect to it? So that sort of thing, what I write inside it. Some basic stuff, not much detail.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll put the recording on the same group, on the WhatsApp group, once it is available. So if you want, you can go through it again. Tomorrow, I'll walk you through a little bit of documentation also, what sort of documentation I'll be sharing. So I'll share all those with you tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, then I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
you.
Pratik. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Pratik.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.